I've had this bike 6.5 years. Could I live with this bike as my only bike? Well, yes, I could live with this bike as my only bike. I would of course miss my big bike, but living with my YZF R125 has always been a pleasure. When you're considering what a bike might be like to live with, I'd say you're weighing up the pros and cons. You're considering the convenience and the things that you like about the bike against the things that perhaps are less convenient, or maybe even the things that annoy you. With this bike, there's one or two things, niggling little things that annoy me. But living with this bike, well, let's look at the pros. First of all, no matter what you're doing with one of these, you're going to look good doing it. It doesn't matter whether it's the Gen 1, 2, 3, 4, I think they all look good. I think, and I am biased of course, I think the YZF 125 is still one of the best looking 125s out there. And that really, it is a personal thing, personal preference, and it really doesn't matter which generation you're talking about. I think they all look bloody brilliant. So whatever you're doing with one of these, you're going to look good doing it. But living with one, well, what I love about this from a convenience point of view is just how easy it is to ride. It is a little bit tall for some people, so bear that in mind if you are somewhat at all vertically challenged. I'm 6'2", so I flat foot this incredibly easily, but it is a tall bike, so bear that one in mind. But I find it, personally, I find it really easy to live with. I find it really easy to ride. It's particularly light. I've tried a few bikes now, big bikes as well as 125s, and this is probably the lightest bike that I've tried. It'll be similar with the MT 125. And then there's the engine. I think the engine is absolutely brilliant. Again, it's going to be comparable with your MT because it's the same engine. But I find this engine, again, in comparison to some of the other 125s that I've ridden, the others seem to have their gears a lot closer together, whereas this one, the gears are a little bit longer. So although you are still rattling up and down through 6 gears as you would expect to do with a 125, just take slightly longer with one of these. And the engine is lovely and smooth, never caused me any problems, never given me any cause for concern. The bike will do 70. I had a comment on one of my videos the other day where I'd mentioned that this bike will do 70, and someone said, that bike won't do 70. And I thought to myself, why would I say it if it wasn't true? Like, I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone. You know, I'm not trying to convince myself whether to buy this bike or not. I already have this bike. If this bike didn't do 70, I'd tell you this bike didn't do 70, but it does. This bike will do 70. Depending on the gradient, he may take a little while to get there. But I've never had a problem. I've never actually taken this bike on the motorway. But yeah, plenty of A roads, plenty of national speed limit dual carriageways where you can do 70. And this bike will do 70. And even at 70, the bike doesn't feel that different. I don't get the impression that you can only do 70 for a short amount of time. I wouldn't want to sit at 70 for a prolonged period of time, but again, the bike will do it. It feels just as comfortable at 70 as it does at 30. Staying with the engine then, it is amazing on fuel, as you would expect it to be. Being a 125, you'd expect it to be good on fuel, but it really is. I've never done an MPG test. I really should get a little bit nerdy about it and do an MPG test, but it does surprise me just how long this bike will go on and on and on for. Certainly in comparison to my 600, my 600 will do 100 miles tops, and then she wants more fuel, and that's taken me a little bit of getting used to, because I'm not used to that. I spent about 4 years on this bike before I went and got my big bike, so I became accustomed to rarely filling up. And then there's the fact that the bike is lovely and quiet. Again, that's personal preference. Some people like a loud bike, some people want a loud bike, and if you do, that's fine, that's on you. If you want a loud bike, by all means get yourself an aftermarket exhaust and you'll be absolutely fine. I've tried one. I have tried an aftermarket exhaust. It looked lovely, it sounded lovely at tick over, but I'd become accustomed to having a quiet bike. Of course, this was my first bike, and I'd become accustomed to his stock exhaust, and then when I put on my aftermarket exhaust, as I say, it looked amazing, sounded amazing at tick over, but then you got out and actually started riding, and it almost made my ears bleed, which was a shame. It was a real shame. So I went back to a mostly stock exhaust. The only thing I've done is I've removed the tip from the right at the very end of the exhaust there. I've removed the tip there, and I've painted the exhaust. You can't really see it because he has a pretty frock, but I painted the exhaust black, and then I carbon wrapped it, and you'd think it wouldn't you'd think it wouldn't stick, but actually that's not the exhaust, that's just like a heat shield. The exhaust is another inch further in there, so there's a big gap between the actual exhaust and the heat shield, and so although this is an adhesive, it actually works really well, and it sticks. Look how filthy he is from last week. Wow, you wouldn't fit a sandwich in there. In fact, apart from a kickstand plate, and sometimes there's a disc lock in there, that's about it. It's one of those things that you have to live with. One thing that you don't have to live with though are the stock tyres. Michelin Pilot Street, hard wearing, and they will last you bloody ages. So if you're on a budget, they can seem like a really good option, and if you're riding just in the summer, they probably are a good option. But please, 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 if you're going to use one of these in the wet, change from your stock tyres. Now, something else that's one of those things that I do have to live with. I mentioned earlier that being 6'2" helps because it's quite a tall bike, and it definitely does help. However, slow manoeuvres, as a guy who's 6'2", my hand, or rather my wrist, can hit my knee. So when you're doing tight, slow manoeuvres, just bear that one in mind. I end up doing a bit of a man spread, which helps because you've got a better counterbalance if your knees are out wide. That's something, wasn't expecting that when I first started riding. Do you know, it's amazing what you do get used to as well. Even the things that you don't want to live with. When you're talking about the pros and cons of a bike, some of the things that annoy you, you end up living with them because it's not that great of a deal. It's just a minor inconvenience, and there are a few of them. I'm going to let this Mini go. I don't want to make her paranoid. So, well, there's nothing around. I can just stop here for a second. yeah, these minor inconveniences. So for example, right, she's going. For example, I've been riding my big bike lately. She has a gear indicator. She has a clock. And I've gotten so used to having these two things now that I get back on this bike and it's, oh, what time is it? Where's my clock? You don't really need a gear indicator, but I like them. And once I've gotten used to having one, I just want my gear indicator. But yes, some of these things you live with and some of these things you can't, or you wish you couldn't. But yes, I want my clock. I want my gear indicator. But then again, Laren, my big bike, she doesn't have a fuel gauge. It's amazing what you take for granted. Like, this bike has a fuel gauge, and when I tell people who don't ride bikes that my big bike doesn't have a fuel gauge, they think I'm making it up because they all drive cars and cars have fuel gauges. People genuinely think I'm making it up. But again, it's amazing what you get used to. On this bike, I know when I need to put fuel in, and I can see the fuel gauge going down incredibly slowly, admittedly. But with my big bike, a light comes on and then it's, oh, okay, where's the nearest petrol station? So not having a fuel gauge on the big bike, got used to it. Same as with this bike, not having a clock, not having a gear indicator, I got used to it. I do wish I had them, but does it detract from the enjoyment of the bike? No, not really. I'm just being particular, and I wish I had them. I can live with it. I have lived with it. I've lived with it all these years. The only thing that really annoys me about this bike, putting aside all the slight inconveniences, you know, not having any storage, well, that's true of most sports bikes. Not having a clock, I guess I could fit one. Not having a gear indicator, yes, I could fit one. A lot of the little annoyances you can live with. But the one thing that really bloody annoys me about this bike is that damn service interval. 1800 miles. Yes, it seems quite short to me, but then it is a single cylinder 125cc engine. That little engine has got to do a lot of work to give us what it gives us, because it does give us a lot. And so, although I wish we had a longer service interval, again, it doesn't detract from just how amazing this bike is.